Did the West ever want democracy in the Middle East? Before answering that question, it's a good idea to think of the countries in the Middle East as two separate groups of countries. One group of countries are republics, and the other group of countries are countries ruled by royal families. Now, you would assume that the Western world that's dominated by forms of democratic governments would naturally have a better relationship with republics, as opposed to these royal families in the Middle East. But if you look at the relationship these two groups of countries have with the West, it's very surprising. The countries that are ruled by royal families are Jordan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait. Now, these countries don't have a good relationship with the West. The people in these countries feel subjugated by the West. The people in these countries do not want Western rulers ruling them through their royal families. But the political leaders of these countries are the perfect subordinates for the West. They destroy any possibility of a natural rebellion in the country. Every time you have any sort of political uprising in any of these countries that's against Western exploitation, it is put down by the royal families. If a if a movement happens in Bahrain to overthrow the royal family, then the Saudi Arabia will help them shut it down. If something happens in Jordan, Saudi Arabia will help them shut it down. If something happens in Qatar or Kuwait, they'll help each other shut down movements in their own countries. Because all these countries work together with the West to maintain an oppression of the people in those regions. They are perfect vassals for Western countries. At the end of the day, they can blame the worst things on the rulers of these countries. And the rulers of these countries don't have to do much. They don't even have to do the complex task of truly having a vision for a country or leading it. They simply take a portion of the resources that the West is exploiting from their own country as a payment for helping them do it. And that is the entire relationship between these royal families in the West. Now, as opposed to these countries that have royal families, the other countries in the Middle East are republics. These countries are Yemen, Lebanon, Iran, Syria, Iraq, Egypt, and Afghanistan. Now, most of these countries have been maligned so much in Western media that most people don't even know they are republics. But every single one of them has a form of political movement in the country that responds to the local population, which is why they are incompatible with the Western world. Because the Western world simply wants rulers who will exploit their people for the bidding of the West. And if they will not do it, they will destroy them. Now think about these republics. Afghanistan, invaded by America. Now, people don't really think of Afghanistan as a republic that responds to its people in any truly democratic way. But the Taliban began as a Sunni Islamist national and pro-Pashtun movement. It was an organic political movement that was born from the desires of the people. Now, I don't support, obviously, the Taliban government, but you cannot deny that it is an organic development in that country. And I would argue that the worst aspects of that development are in response to American persecution. Another one of these republics, Syria. When Westerners hear of Syria, the first thing they think of is Bashar al-Assad. And they think that he was the king of Syria. He was not. Now, obviously, he was a long-term president. But the country was a republic. He was President Bashar al-Assad, head of the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party in Syria. And his political party had corralled most of the political power in the country. But that is a republic. And the reason that the West invaded Syria wasn't because he was a dictator, though he was. It was because the form of government that existed in Syria was a form of representation for the people. Not a good form of representation, but a form of representation for the people. And so, anytime a people are represented in any way, the ruling elite tend to fight back against the exploitation of the country as a whole. And so, yes, Syria had internal problems. Bashar al Assad had internal problems. As he stayed president, over time he amassed more and more power and became more and more corrupt. But one of the main things that kept him in power is that people in Syria knew that he was a bulwark against Western exploitation. And what happens after Syria is invaded and Bashar al-Assad is no longer president of Syria? America and Israel make Ahmad al-Shara president of Syria, a person that the U.S. had a $10 million bounty for only in 2024. And so you wonder why and how they could do this. And then you realize, oh, obviously, the West doesn't want a sustainable government that can grow in any strength or response to the will of the people. The less democratic the government is, the better it is a tool for Western exploitation. And so, anytime America or the West interacts with these political systems in the Middle East, it is to make them less democratic. Because if you come to exploit the local populations, any form of democracy is going to express sentiment against that exploitation. Now, another republic in the Middle East is Yemen, which has had a civil war for quite a while now, but is a republic. And because they are a republic, they respond to the will of the people, which is one of the reasons why Yemen is one of the few countries in the Middle East really standing up for Palestine, who are willing to suffer along Palestinians, because Yemen responds to the will of its society more than the royal countries. And obviously that makes it a enemy of the West, and so it has to be destroyed. And so the West has had an ongoing project to destroy Yemen. It supplies Saudi Arabia with weapons to invade it. It constantly has it bombarded. It denies it all resources. It's embargoed. The country is starving, lacking resources, and still they will not bow to Western oppression. Another republic in the Middle East, Lebanon. It's a parliamentary democratic republic. Why can the West and Israel and America not have a good relationship with Lebanon? It's because it is a democratic republic. It's because Lebanon is right next to Israel. And so these Arab people have to see their Arab brothers and sisters be genocided across the border. And obviously, like all human beings in all places and all time, this bothers them. And because they have a government that responds to their will, that government cannot have a good relationship with the West. And so it has to be destroyed. Israel and America have been chipping at Lebanon now for years. In the past couple of years, Israel has started just openly invading and taking more land in Lebanon and Syria. Another republic in the Middle East, Egypt is not technically in the Middle East, but it's thought of as it's part of the Middle Eastern family of countries. And it's the same thing. Egypt is a semi-presidential republic that responds kind of to the will of its people, which is why during the Arab Spring there were mass revolts in the country and the Muslim Brotherhood was instituted. And the Muslim Brotherhood won power in the country on being anti-imperial, on being anti-Westerner, on being pro-Palestine. That was too much for the West. And so instead of letting the Muslim Brotherhood, which was democratically elected, stay in power, they supported the current president slash dictator, Abdul el-Sisi. And they supported him in taking power and persecuting the Muslim Brotherhood. The last country we're going to discuss is obviously Iran. Iran has been a bulwark against Western imperialism in the Middle East. While it is not the only country in the Middle East to have been fighting Western imperialism this entire time, it is the greatest source of anti-imperialism power in the Middle East. Its Shia leaders are the religious leaders of the Shia people in most of the Middle East. And because the Shia culture in Iran has been married to the anti-imperialist sentiment that their country has cultivated, the Shia culture in the Middle East has also been married to anti-imperialist sentiment. And so everyone in the Middle East who's anti-imperialist, everyone in the Middle East who wants Western power gone from the Middle East, looks to Iran as a benchmark for how to behave, how to respond, and who to lead them. And that is the main reason why Iran cannot stand. It is the main reason why Iran has to be destroyed. Westerners, especially Americans and Israelis, will tell you that Iran is ruled by mullahs, it's a absolute theocracy, and that's just not true. It is an Islamic republic, and its political machinations respond to the will of the people. Not in the same way Western countries do, but it is a response to the people. And the people in Iran, much like the people in the rest of the Middle East, much like the people everywhere, do not want to be exploited. And Iran's biggest sin is it has the power to not be exploited the way the West wants to exploit it. Unlike Yemen, unlike Lebanon, unlike Syria, unlike Iraq, unlike Egypt, Iran has so far proven too strong to bring down. And so the West has spent decades readying the invasion, readying the floor to destroy Iran. And the same way it spent decades planning how to do that to the other republics of the Middle East. And so no, when you hear Western voices talk about bringing democracy to anywhere in the Middle East, no, it is a lie. The West does not want democracy in the Middle East. And the same way the West does not want democracy anywhere else. The West wants ruling families, dictatorships, anything but a system that responds to the will of the people. Because the West wants countries, that entire political system, protects them from the retaliation of the people they're exploiting. And so, no, the West never wanted democracy in the Middle East. Nothing has limited democracy more in the Middle East than the West.